They tried to bury it, not in dirt, but in distraction, behind centuries of doctrine, fear, and silence. This book, erased from history, holds the kind of knowledge that doesn't just change your beliefs. It rewires your energy. And the strangest part, if you're watching this, it means it found you. You didn't just stumble here by chance. You were meant to remember. This is what they didn't want you to see. In this episode of the Ancient Cipher, we uncover the forgotten manuscript that reveals how energy, intention, and perception shape your entire reality, and why it's been hidden for so long. Breeze, center yourself right here, right now. What you're about to uncover represents knowledge that has been systematically erased from human awareness for thousands of years. This video isn't another random piece of content floating through your digital world. It contains secrets that have been deliberately kept from your consciousness across centuries of human civilization. I'm speaking about lost wisdom, mysteries so transformational that religious hierarchies, political institutions, and entire empires have fought desperately to bury them in silence. What drives such extreme suppression? These teachings reveal capabilities that would make you impossible to control. The power to consciously influence universal forces, to deliberately reconstruct your experience of reality, no matter your current situation, geography, or wealth. That this material has emerged in your awareness at this exact moment isn't accidental. These secrets only surface for individuals whose consciousness has begun preparing for such revelations. And now that they've found you, retreating to your previous state of unknowing becomes impossible. What I'm going to share will methodically tear down every false belief currently shaping how you see the world. It will explain why your life appears trapped in endless repeating cycles, and most crucially, it will hand you the real tools needed to smash those patterns once and for all. Stay present through the entire journey, because when we reach the end, you won't simply know about these ancient mysteries, you'll understand exactly how to implement them in your daily life. And once you truly grasp this understanding, nothing in your reality will ever be the same again. Breathe deeply now and come with me to a time and place that holds humanity's deepest secret. Millennia before towering cathedrals stretched toward the clouds, before golden mosques reflected desert sunlight, even before humanity carved its first sacred texts into stone, there existed a land wrapped in mystery and sand, ancient Egypt. But I'm not talking about the Egypt you learned about in school, not the tourist attractions photographed by millions, not the monuments displayed in museums worldwide. We're venturing into the hidden Egypt, the Egypt that remains unknown to almost every human being, the Egypt that served as protector of secrets that would travel through time without ever being fully exposed. Within the darkened halls of holy temples, far beyond where ordinary sight could penetrate, there flourished a select circle. This wasn't a group of regular priests or ambitious rulers hungry for dominance. This was a brotherhood of awakened souls, individuals who had touched something that most would never dare attempt to reach. They understood that real authority didn't exist within the gods, nor within the pharaohs, nor within massive armies. True power lived within consciousness itself. Yes, for these enlightened beings, physical substance was merely a projection, an outer covering. Genuine strength flowed from the invisible realm, from pure frequency, from consciousness operating at its peak potential. These teachers didn't speak to the general population. They didn't stand on public platforms delivering addresses to masses. They whispered, almost silently, passing their wisdom from mind to mind, consciousness to consciousness, with extreme caution, sharing only with those whose awareness had reached the required level of readiness. One careless word, one exposed piece of this knowledge, and they could face total destruction. Because even in those distant times, wisdom represented the ultimate weapon, and this particular wisdom was far too powerful for unprepared minds. Picture the devoted seekers who traveled across endless desert wastelands to locate these masters. Envision brilliant Greek thinkers, curious Persian scholars, dedicated alchemists who had heard whispered stories of hidden understanding flowing along the Nile River. They journeyed from far-off lands, starving for truth, desperate to comprehend how specific Egyptian practices worked, how particular words could heal the sick, how certain people could apparently move through time and space. But when they finally arrived, they discovered that the secret wasn't contained within external ceremonies or rituals. It was embedded within an invisible structure that connected absolutely everything in existence. And very few were welcomed into this inner circle. Very few possessed the necessary preparation. Every hidden scroll, every carved symbol, every concealed artwork carried pieces of a massive puzzle. But the real secret wasn't written on walls or recorded in books. It was something that couldn't be documented, something that could only be directly experienced, felt, lived from the inside. It was as if Egypt possessed not only monuments of stone, but monuments of energy, vibrational codes, living fields of understanding that revealed themselves only to those who had developed the ability to see beyond the surface of physical reality. Centuries afterward, scholars would continue trying to decode these clues. Some would lose themselves in the quest, seeking magical formulas, chasing literal gold, pursuing material dominance. Others, far more rare, would recognize that something infinitely greater existed there, something that concerned the basic architecture of the universe itself, something that connected thought, emotion, vibration, and reality through a field that could only be accessed by those willing to transcend ordinary illusions. Because at the heart of all this knowledge, among countless symbols and teachings, a figure begins to emerge, a name that crosses cultures, that appears in mysterious records throughout history, that inspires myths, legends, and hidden traditions across the world. And he wasn't just another wise teacher. He was the master, the original transmitter of this profound knowledge. And now that we've reached this point in our exploration, it becomes impossible to turn back, because he is about to be revealed. The one whose influence spans centuries, whose teachings whisper in the consciousness of every genuine seeker, even when no one knows exactly who he truly was. He has no fixed appearance in historical records. In some traditions, he appears as a sage wrapped in white robes. In others, as a scribe with the head of an ibis, recording the universe's deepest secrets. In certain accounts, he's simply a voice, a presence, a pure consciousness. But in all traditions, he represents a figure that transcends death, because his physical form matters little. What he carries within his being is what lives eternally. This master didn't come to establish a religion, nor to be worshipped, nor to have temples erected in his name. He didn't seek to become an object of devotion. He transmitted knowledge. He passed along the keys of understanding, and these keys were never intended for everyone. They were reserved for those who had reached the necessary level of preparation. Because it's not enough to simply want knowledge, you must be prepared to bear the weight of truth. And the truth he brought wasn't comfortable or reassuring. It wasn't designed to stroke the ego or promise an easier life. It was designed to transform everything. Absolutely everything. The ancient texts speak of someone who walked among kings and servants with identical composure, with the same unshakable steadiness. Someone who spoke of universal laws, laws that stood above any human code, any passing morality, any limited belief. Laws that govern the universe itself, energy, creation. Laws that, once truly understood, allow the initiate not merely to comprehend reality, but to actively shape it. Because reality, he taught, is not fixed. It is not static. It is not made of unchangeable stone. It is made of mind, of vibration, of focused intention. Think about this for a moment. How many times have you been taught to believe that life happens to you? That you are just a piece on a board played by greater forces, by distant gods, by systems you can't touch? The Master of Masters came to dismantle that illusion. He said, "You are not a victim, you are a creator. But to create, you need to know the invisible rules that hold everything together." And that's why he didn't give his secrets just any way. He didn't shout to the crowds. He didn't write on public walls. He passed it from mouth to ear, from initiate to initiate, because knowing too much without preparation could be destructive. Because when you touch the true fabric of reality, there's no turning back. Among the secrets he left behind, there was one that changed everything. One that didn't just talk about how the outer world works, but about how the mind shapes it, about how thought generates form, how emotion generates matter, how intention generates destiny. A secret that couldn't be put into common words because it went beyond logic. A secret that, once accessed, separated the sincere seekers from the curious, the transformers from the spectators. And now as we approach this secret, it's impossible not to feel the pulse it carries. Because when you start touching these teachings, something inside you awakens. What seemed fixed starts to vibrate. What seemed solid starts to dissolve. And then, without warning, you're pushed into the first great rupture. Think carefully. Everything you call real, everything you touch, everything you feel, everything that builds your visible world, none of it is truly solid. To ordinary eyes, the world is made of stone, flesh, wood, steel. But those who dare to cross the surface, who dare to look deeper, find something else. Movement, frequency, vibration. It's not just a mystical theory. It's not guru talk. Physics already shows that atoms are mostly empty space, that particles appear and disappear, that the foundation of what you call matter is pure dancing energy. Now imagine that not just at the physical level, but at the mental, emotional, spiritual level. Imagine that every thought you have, every emotion you feel, every intention you carry, all of it is energy in motion, all of it vibrates, all of it affects. And the most impressive part, all of it shapes. The Forbidden Book speaks exactly of this. It doesn't give you a manual to manipulate matter like a wizard in fantasy stories. It shows you that to alter reality, you first need to understand how that reality is composed. Because it's not from the outside in. It's not by hitting the stone that you change the stone. It's by changing the vibration that sustains the stone. It's by changing the invisible field, the field that connects everything. This isn't about force, it's about tuning. Think about the radio. You can turn the dial to any station, but it's no use turning it with anger or with haste or with strength if you don't adjust it exactly to the right frequency. No matter how hard you try, the sound won't come through cleanly. Life works like that. You can fight, scream, push, you can try to move the whole world with your hands. But if your energy, your mind, your vibration is not aligned, everything stays in the same place. Because the secret is not on the surface. It's in the invisible pattern that generates the visible. This knowledge wasn't hidden by accident. It was hidden because once you understand this, you are no longer manipulable. You no longer buy into the idea that you need to be saved by something external. You no longer bow to forces that tell you your reality is unchangeable. You realize that true change starts within, at the exact point where energy is born, where vibration starts to shape form. And at that point, you stop being a prisoner. But attention, before you rush to try to use this power, there's something essential you need to understand. Because between you and this ability to shape reality, there are mirrors. Mirrors that distort, that confuse, that deceive. And without learning to decipher them, any attempt to manipulate energy will just be a dangerous game of illusions. And it's precisely because these mirrors exist that everything becomes so fascinating and at the same time so challenging. Reality is not simple. It's not a solid structure you can measure only with a ruler or understand only with your eyes. Reality is a game of reflections, a field of resonance, a great stage where what is above projects below and what is inside echoes outward. This is the principle of correspondence, one of the oldest, most powerful, and frighteningly one of the most ignored laws by most people. Imagine a calm lake under the moonlight. When you touch the surface of the water, the reflection of the moon trembles, distorts, ripples. You didn't touch the moon. You didn't go to the sky. You just moved the mirror, and even so, what seemed untouchable reacted. That is correspondence. That is the ancient art that magicians, alchemists, and wise ones mastered. They understood that change doesn't begin in the macro. It begins in the micro. You don't need to move mountains on the outside when you learn to move mountains on the inside. You don't need to fight the world when you know how to transform yourself. These ancients knew how to work with symbols because they understood that symbols are not just pretty figures in books or talismans hanging on a neck. They are access points, vibrational portals, keys that align consciousness to universal patterns. They knew how to meditate, not just to empty the mind, but to get in sync with a greater rhythm, a rhythm that vibrates beyond human time. They knew that energetic manipulation doesn't start with external tools, but at the most intimate point of being, in the invisible field where everything is born before becoming matter. In practice, this means something very direct. When you are at peace inside, it matters little what chaos surrounds you. You become a vibrational bubble, a self-sustaining field, and this field influences everything around you. On the other hand, when you carry fear, even if you smile and say positive words, the real field you are emitting is that of fear. It's not what you want to appear that counts. It's what you truly vibrate that shapes the bridge between the invisible and the visible. The principle of as above, so below is not a cute metaphor. It's a practical formula, a hidden bridge between planes that are in constant communication. What you activate in the invisible resonates in the visible. What you align in the detail projects into the whole. What you heal in your intimacy reverberates to the collective, to the family, to the environment, to society. That's why the great sages were able to provoke enormous changes without lifting a finger, without dominating anyone, without using force or manipulation. They didn't need to. They were one with the right vibration, and that was enough. Everything is already connected. Everything is already vibrating. Everything is already flowing in constant motion. The question that matters is, are you swimming with that flow or resisting it? Are you in tune with the universal dance or trying to force a song only you can hear? Because it's no use knowing the law if you live out of sync with it. The bridge between worlds only works for those who learn to walk it with respect, awareness, and precision. But here's the crucial point. None of this works as a cheap trick or superficial magic. It's not about fooling anyone or manipulating instant results. This only works because behind everything, there's a hidden code that connects the planes, a central principle that guarantees harmony and keeps the universal movement running without collapsing. This code is non-negotiable. It can't be cheated. It can't be bent to the ego. It's the backbone of the entire functioning of reality, and anyone who truly wants to master these laws needs to understand this next piece. And it's exactly about this hidden principle, this invisible gear that pulls everything in the cosmos, that we'll touch on in the next step. Because now we're ready to discover not just how the universe vibrates, but how it oscillates, and how learning to navigate that movement can forever change the way you exist in the world. Stay with me, because at the end, we'll cover how all this teaching, all this wisdom, can be put into practice. It's important for you to understand that nothing is fixed, nothing is still. Not the most solid mountain, not the ground beneath your feet, not the fear you feel in the middle of the night, not the anger that explodes in your chest, not even the joy that suddenly fills you. Everything vibrates, everything pulses, everything dances. The forbidden book reveals bluntly that the entire universe is vibration, its rhythm, its flow. It's a continuous vibrational field where every little thing resonates together. And here comes the emotional shock. You are also in this field. You're not an island. You're not separate. You're not watching from afar like a spectator. You vibrate with everything, even when you don't notice, even when you think you're alone, even when you feel stuck, stagnant, disconnected. You're not. You're participating all the time. Every thought you have is a vibration. Every emotion you have is a vibration. Every belief you carry, every word you say, every intention you hold in your heart, all of that generates frequency. All of that is like a note played inside a cosmic orchestra. And those notes don't just die in the air. They resonate, they echo, they create waves, waves that will hit something, waves that will trigger responses. Do you realize the impact of that? There's no void. There's no neutrality. You are always emitting, always influencing, always stirring the invisible web that connects everything. And the most impressive part is that the universe responds. It responds not to what you say out loud, but to what you vibrate. You can say, "I'm fine," while inside you're full of fear, and it's the vibration of fear that will shape your experience. You can say, "I believe," while you carry deep doubts, and it's the doubt that will echo. The Forbidden Book teaches that reality doesn't respond to what you think on the surface. It responds to your deepest vibrational tone. Now feel the impact of this. By changing your frequency, you change the field. And by changing the field, you change the outcome. This isn't about cheap positive thinking. This is about recalibrating the energy you are emitting consciously. It's about understanding that you are a living antenna, a transmitter that tunes in and emits, and that everything around you reacts to that signal. Have you noticed how some people seem to attract opportunities, open doors, unexpected encounters? It's not chance. It's tuning. It's resonance. It's vibration. But here's the most dangerous detail. Because when you learn to move within this field, you're not just amplifying what you already like. You also touch the game of opposites. You start to realize that love and hate are poles of the same energy. That courage and fear are on the same line. That light and shadow are not rivals, but extremes that can be transmuted. And it's precisely here that the most delicate, most transformative, most dangerous power arises. The power to transform opposites, to cross the bridge between extremes, and reframe everything. And by touching the secret of transforming opposites, you realize you're stepping into the most delicate and powerful core of the universe. Because it's not just about understanding that everything vibrates. It's about understanding that everything vibrates in pairs, in polarities. There's no side by itself. There's no extreme that exists in isolation. Where there's light, there's shadow. Where there's peace, there's the potential for chaos. Where there's love, there's also the seed of hate. And this is not a mistake, nor a flaw in creation. This is the engine of existence. Now imagine you wake up in the morning and feel an inexplicable joy. The sun touches your skin, you take a deep breath, feel your chest expand, and you think you're just happy. But what you're experiencing is the result of an invisible balance, where joy can only exist because on the other side, there's the potential for sadness. And if you don't understand this relationship, you become vulnerable. You think that when sadness shows up, everything is over. You don't realize that sadness isn't the end. It's just the other side of the dance. The ancient alchemists called this the art of balancing opposites. They knew that all energy carries two poles, and that by working with these poles, you can move emotional and energetic mountains. Are you filled with anger? That's just an excess of internal fire. An alchemist doesn't run from that fire. He learns to direct it. He transforms anger into action. He converts aggressiveness into creative power. In the same way, fear, which paralyzes millions every day, doesn't need to be a poison. It can be the raw material of courage. The secret lies in crossing the line that connects the extremes without clinging to either. And here's a detail that many traditions have hidden. You can also do this with others. When you learn to move these energies within yourself, your energetic field starts to affect the fields around you. You walk into a heavy environment and with the right vibration, completely change the atmosphere. You step into a tense conversation and by adjusting your internal pole, dissolve the tension without saying a word. This isn't stage magic. This is vibrational physics. When two fields interact, the more coherent one pulls the other, and the more you master your own internal game, the less you are pulled, and the more you do the pulling. But be careful. This is dangerous territory. Because working with poles isn't just about amplifying what you want. It's about messing with the deep balance of things. When you try to erase pain without integrating it, it comes back twice as strong. When you try to suppress the shadow without understanding it, it seeps through invisible cracks. True mastery isn't about eliminating the side you don't like. It's about learning to dance with it, about learning to move between the extremes like someone crossing a thin bridge over an abyss. And it's no coincidence that the ancients called this the most delicate art. Because when you learn to transform opposites, you're not just playing with your own energy. You're interfering in the collective field, in the vibrational field that connects everyone. Every movement you make, no matter how intimate it seems, creates ripples. And to avoid being swallowed by these waves, to avoid being crushed by your own power, you need to understand the bigger dance, the movement that sweeps everything, that cradles everything, that keeps everything in balance. And as you dive deeper, you start to notice something unsettling. Even when you think you're standing still, even when you believe you're in control, there's a hidden movement acting upon you. An invisible, silent pendulum that governs your life without you realizing it. This pendulum isn't just a vague metaphor. It's real, pulsing in the tides of your mood, in the ups and downs of your emotions, in the cycles that lift you up and then throw you down. Have you ever wondered why some days everything flows, when you feel invincible? And then on other days, without warning, a cloud seems to settle over your head, draining your energy, your motivation, your light. That's not random. It's the hidden rhythm at work. The forbidden book reveals that everything, absolutely everything in the universe obeys this rhythmic movement. The tides rise and fall, the seasons advance and retreat. Day turns into night. Joy makes space for sadness. Vital energy pulses in waves, never in a straight line. This happens outside of you, and also inside of you. Your thoughts oscillate. Your feelings oscillate. Your inner energy oscillates. The problem is that most people don't see this. They think they're in control when they're happy, and blame fate when they sink. They don't realize they're being dragged by an invisible pendulum, swinging from one extreme to the other without awareness. Now imagine the emotional impact of realizing that you're not standing still, that you've never been still. Even when you try to hold on to a state of happiness or success, the pendulum keeps moving. It swings back and forth, and the more you cling to one side, the more intensely it pulls you to the opposite side. This explains why many people feel like they live in cycles, a cycle of enthusiasm followed by discouragement, a cycle of gain followed by loss, a cycle of hope followed by frustration. And all of this happens because they don't know how to neutralize the rhythm. The ancient masters knew this. They observed nature and saw that movement was constant, that nothing stayed still. But instead of being victims of these tides, they learned to position themselves at a point of balance. The Forbidden Book speaks of this skill, mental neutralization. It's the secret that sets you free, because when you learn to place yourself at the center, when you learn not to be thrown from side to side, you stop suffering from emotional swings, from life's ups and downs. You don't stop the pendulum, that would be impossible, but you stop being pulled by it. Think about it. Have you noticed how some people seem to remain calm even in the middle of chaos? How they aren't crushed by either success or failure? How they maintain a calm, steady gaze while everyone around them is losing their head? These people have discovered the secret of neutralization. They aren't fighting against the rhythm. They aren't trying to stop the pendulum from swinging. They've simply learned not to be carried away by the movement. They are anchored in an internal point that doesn't depend on the external tides. And here's the deepest impact. Without neutralization, you are a prisoner of the swings. You live reacting. You feel good when things go well and crash when things go wrong. You think the problem is outside, at work, in relationships, in money. But actually, the problem is inside, in the fact that you're identified with the swings. The Forbidden Book teaches that as long as you don't learn to neutralize, you will never be free. You will always be a piece played by the back and forth of the universe, a puppet tied to the invisible rhythm that governs everything. But to understand how to use this neutralization, you first need to face one of the deepest laws, one that operates behind all this movement. Because it's no use just knowing the pendulum exists. You need to know the hidden structure that sustains this swing, the secret logic that feeds the rhythm of things. Without this, any attempt to break free will be superficial, temporary. True power begins when you understand the law that rocks the pendulum, that pushes and pulls, that gives and takes, that blows and draws back. And it's exactly when you begin to face this invisible rhythm that cradles everything that an even more crushing truth emerges before you. Nothing that happens around you, absolutely nothing, is random. This isn't just a pretty phrase to comfort an aching heart. This is a law, an ancient, deep, immutable law that the Forbidden Book reveals without sugarcoating, the law of cause and effect. Chance, bad luck, luck. These words are just childish ways of naming what we don't understand. In the universe, everything vibrates, everything connects, everything moves in chains of consequences. And you, whether you like it or not, are woven into this web. Have you ever stopped to think about why certain patterns keep repeating in your life? Why you always attract the same type of situation, the same type of person, the same type of challenge? Why certain results seem inevitable, even when you try to do things differently? The answer is right here. Nothing is coming out of nowhere. Every event has a cause. Every emotion has an origin. Every reaction has a previous trigger. And if you don't learn to see this invisible chain, you live like a pawn on a board you barely understand. You think you're choosing, but you're just reacting to pieces that were moved before you. Imagine this in detail. You wake up late. Why? Because last night you went to bed late. Why? Because you were stuck on social media. Why? Because you were anxious. Why? Because you had a difficult conversation earlier. Why? Because weeks ago you let a problem pile up. And so on. Do you see it? Every moment is the effect of a previous cause, and every choice you make now is a cause that will generate effects tomorrow. Most people live only in the effect. They react. They complain. They feel like victims. They don't realize that deep down they are creating their own chains of cause. The secret book teaches that if you really want to have power, you need to step out of the role of a pawn. You need to start playing as a master. That means learning to move the pieces consciously, understanding that your thoughts are causes, your words are causes, your intentions are causes, your small everyday gestures are causes, and all of them intertwine, shaping the reality you live in. This is empowering, but also scary. Because by accepting this truth, you lose the right to blame chance. You realize you're creating all the time, whether you know it or not. Now take a deep breath and feel the impact of this. How many things in your life today are the direct result of causes you yourself set in motion in the past? How many current situations are effects of vibrations, actions, thoughts you put out back then? And more importantly, what causes are you generating right now in this exact moment that will shape your coming months, your coming years? The Forbidden Book doesn't give you a magic formula to control everything, but it offers you a mirror where you see, maybe for the first time, that you're not just a passenger on this boat. You're the captain, you're at the helm. And here's where the most fascinating part lies. Because once you start understanding the law of cause and effect, you not only stop complaining about the effects, you begin to deliberately create causes. You plant seeds with awareness. You stop wasting energy trying to control the past or predict every detail of the future. Instead, you return to the point of origin, the now. The only place where you can act, emit, vibrate, move, change. And those who master this are no longer stuck in the superficial game of life. And when you understand that you're at the helm of your own life, that you're not a passive spectator or a plaything of circumstances, but a co-author of your experience, something deep begins to move inside you. A new dimension opens up, not as a distant theory, but as a living, pulsing feeling that true creative power doesn't just come from positive thinking or from acting for the sake of acting. It's born from a subtle, invisible but powerful union between two primordial forces that run through all existence. These forces are not symbolic. They're not just philosophical archetypes. They're the secret engines behind all manifestation. The Forbidden Book, the one that guarded ancient secrets, reveals that these two forces are inside you, even if you've never learned to notice them. The masculine principle doesn't mean man or physical gender. It represents the active energy, the force that projects, that directs, that takes initiative, that cuts through inertia to bring movement. It is the spark of creation, the breath that ignites, the gesture that takes the first step. The feminine principle, on the other hand, is also not tied to woman or gender. It is the receptive energy, the invisible womb that welcomes, transforms, nurtures, and gives shape to what was initiated. It's the fertile ground where the seed sprouts, the space of gestation, the matrix where ideas take form. These two forces are not opposites, as many think. They are complementary, eternally dancing with each other at the heart of the universe. Nothing exists without their meeting. Think about it. A seed doesn't become a plant on its own. It needs the earth, the water, the darkness of the soil to break through. An idea doesn't materialize just because you thought it. It needs the mental and emotional space to be cultivated, cared for, nurtured, until it turns into action. An intention doesn't generate transformation without being welcomed internally. Now stop. Take a deep breath. Feel this inside you. How many times in your life have you gotten stuck because you were only in action mode? Forcing, pushing, insisting, wanting everything to happen by sheer force without leaving space to welcome, to wait, to sense the right moment? And how many times have you been paralyzed, just dreaming, idealizing, waiting for the perfect moment, wishing something magical would happen without taking the first step, without activating the energy that moves things? This imbalance is not a small detail. It's the root of many energetic, emotional, and even material blockages. When you overwork one side and neglect the other, you block the flow that could bring into existence what you long for. The ancients called this the invisible marriage. It wasn't a physical marriage, but an alchemical union that happens in the heart, in the mind, in the energetic field. It's the moment when you learn to be whole, when you unite your inner masculine, your ability to act, decide, make your presence known, with your inner feminine, your ability to listen, intuit, welcome. Something magical happens. You stop fighting with the universe. You begin to flow with it. You no longer rely solely on brute force or only on waiting for miracles. You become a clean, aligned channel through which conscious creation can pass. Notice the depth of this. Many spend their whole lives chasing external techniques, complex rituals, charms, mantras, spells, without realizing that the true secret isn't outside. It's in this inner balance. Because without balance, all creative energy disperses. You try, but go nowhere. Or you wait, and nothing arrives. But when you find that internal point where the masculine and feminine embrace, where action is smooth and receptivity is firm, you start manifesting effortlessly. Not because everything suddenly became easy, but because you became one with the flow. The most amazing thing is that this depends on no one but you. It doesn't depend on external conditions, on the economy, on time, on the people around you. This invisible marriage is always available inside you. It's the final gold the alchemist spoke of. The hidden treasure that was never in the mines of the material world, but in the crucible of your own soul. The true secret laboratory, the true hidden temple, is not a place out there. It is you. And now that we understand this inner alchemy, we will soon take the next step to see how all of this can be put into practice, how to manipulate our energy in everyday life and rewrite our reality, not as an empty promise, but as a real alignment between consciousness, vibration, and action. Get ready. The most transformative part is still to come. And when you understand that the true gold is within, a new layer of mystery begins to unfold. Because the myth of alchemy, so misinterpreted over the centuries, was never about transforming physical metals. It was never about laboratories full of tubes and cauldrons, nor about hidden wizards trying to manufacture material wealth. The true alchemy, the one kept under lock and key, was always about the invisible, silent, and deeply transformative work that happens inside each human being. The Forbidden Book reveals bluntly, the famous philosopher's stone, so sought after by alchemists and dreamers, is not an object you hold in your hands. It is a state of consciousness. It is the ability to transmute the densest emotions into elevated states. It is transforming the hatred that eats you up into compassion that heals. It is taking ignorance, the not knowing, and turning it into a thirst for wisdom, into humble searching, into an openness to learn. It is looking inside and realizing that all your weaknesses, all your fears, all your pains are raw materials waiting to be refined. Imagine for a moment how much energy you've already spent fighting your own anger, your insecurity, your sadness. Imagine how many times you tried to bury it deep, to hide it from yourself, to deny it. But true alchemy doesn't reject the shadow. It embraces it. It looks into the eyes of darkness and asks, "What do you have to teach me?" Because by doing that, something magical happens. The energy that was trapped in hatred begins to move, to dissolve, to transform. The weight that seemed crushing turns into inner strength. The fear that once paralyzed becomes quiet courage. This is living alchemy. This is the true gold. And you know what's most impressive? This isn't reserved for initiates in secret orders. It's not hidden away in distant temples. It doesn't depend on an enlightened master to be accessed. It's here, now, inside you, waiting for you to awaken to it. That's why the knowledge was called forbidden. Because once a person realizes they can transform their own energy, no one can control them anymore. No institution, no authority, no system. True power is not external. It's born the moment you understand that you are capable of governing your own inner transformation. The Forbidden Book brings this clear, powerful, almost brutal message. There's no point in wanting to change the world out there if you're not willing to face the furnace of personal transformation. There's no point in wanting to fix everything in others if you won't confront your own reflections, your own inner mirrors. The philosopher's stone won't fall from the sky. It needs to be forged, worked on, built day by day in the small, in the invisible. Every conscious choice, every elevated thought, every transmuted emotion counts. And so, finally, we arrive at the revelation that's been hanging in the air from the start. The name that for centuries circulated only in whispers among initiates, in the discreet circles of those who dared to touch forbidden knowledge. The book that crossed generations, surviving erasers, distortions, and persecutions, has a simple but powerful name, the Kybalion. It wasn't born from a single author. It wasn't inspired by any specific religious school, and it doesn't bow to any formal doctrine. The Kybalion appeared at the start of the 20th century, but its roots are as ancient as human thought itself on the mysteries of the universe. It is the modern compilation of the Hermetic laws that, until then, were transmitted exclusively from master to disciple, from lips to attentive ears, in silent rituals protected by oaths of secrecy. Imagine the impact of that. For centuries, the truths contained in the Kybalion were considered too dangerous to circulate freely, not because they were evil, but because they gave those who possessed them something that always frightened the established powers: inner freedom, spiritual autonomy, vibrational power. These teachings showed that you don't need intermediaries between you and the divine, between you and creation, between you and reality. They showed that true transformation doesn't come from the outside, but is born within, when you understand and apply the laws that govern the invisible workings of the cosmos. The Kybalion was written by the so-called three initiates, enigmatic figures whose identities remain unrevealed to this day. We don't know their names, their faces, their stories. We only know that they were responsible for organizing, systematizing, and translating into accessible words a knowledge that came from long before them, from the Egyptian, Greek, Persian traditions, and that had in Hermes Trismegistus its central figure. They didn't create the 7 universal laws described in the book. They merely recorded them. And by doing so, they opened a door that many were not prepared to walk through. Because here's the raw truth. Whoever approaches the Kybalion carries a responsibility. This is not a book to be read like a novel. It's not a historical curiosity or a simple academic study object. It's a living manual. It offers the keys to manipulate energy, alter vibrational patterns, change your own relationship with reality. It shows how to use the mind to act directly upon matter, how to tune your vibration with what you want to attract, how to understand the hidden movements of existence to stop being just a piece on the board and start moving the pieces with awareness. But along with that power comes the weight of its use. Whoever understands these laws can no longer pretend they don't know. They can no longer blame chance, fate, or others. Whoever reads the Kybalion and truly absorbs its content understands that they are a constant co-creator of their own experience, and this realization can be liberating or crushing, because from that point on, there's no going back to the comfort of ignorance. If you've made it this far, take a deep breath, because this is not just another video, not just another piece of content you stumbled upon in the chaos of the internet. This moment is no coincidence. It wasn't luck. It wasn't the algorithm. It wasn't simple curiosity that brought you to these words. There's a vibrational alignment happening right now. Because the Kybalion, this ancient, mysterious book hidden for centuries, doesn't appear to just anyone. It doesn't show itself to those who aren't ready to look at themselves with brutal courage. It doesn't reveal itself to those who still want to sleep in the comfort of illusions. It arrives when the soul has already burned with questions inside, when you're already tired of shallow answers, when deep down, even without knowing how to explain it, you've already felt that there's something greater behind the veil of reality. Do you really think it's a coincidence that these ideas are reaching you right now, at this specific point in your life? How many times have you already noticed patterns, repetitions, subtle signs? How many times have you had the feeling that something bigger was pushing you to see beyond the visible? The Kybalion is not spiritual entertainment. It is a calling, a silent but powerful calling that resonates deep in your consciousness. It calls you to take on something that many people spend their entire lives running from: responsibility. Because by learning these laws, by understanding the Hermetic principles, you can no longer claim ignorance. You can no longer say, "I didn't know my mind influences my reality." You can no longer hand over your power to others. From here on, you are the one holding the reins. And that's scary. It's scary because it's so much easier to stay numb, blaming others, believing that life only happens to you, not through you. But if the Kybalion has reached here, to this screen, to these minutes you're dedicating to listen, it's because you already feel it's time to stop running. The energy moving you has already called for this. The Kybalion only finds those who are ready. Ready doesn't mean perfect. It means willing. Willing to look at your beliefs, your limitations, your projections, and start rebuilding. Willing to ask not just, "How do I change my life?" but "How do I change myself to change my life?" You're standing before an invisible portal, a space where what was just theoretical knowledge starts pulsing as living practice. Don't think these words are here by accident. They're here because at some level you yourself asked for them. Because you already put out into the universe the desire to understand more, to live more consciously, to find something that finally makes sense in the middle of the confusion. And the universe answered. The Kybalion doesn't choose you by luck. It chooses you because your frequency right now is aligned with this revelation. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It means it's going to be transformative. You've made it this far, and now there's no more room for vague phrases. You want to know in a practical way how to manipulate energy and rewrite reality. So take a deep breath and pay attention, because everything you've heard up to now has prepared you for this moment. First, understand, manipulating energy is not forcing the universe to do what you want. It's tuning your inner frequency to what you want to experience. It's aligning your entire being, thoughts, emotions, body, intention, and action, with the result you want to see manifested in the outer world. And that starts at the most intimate level, self-awareness. You need to observe the thoughts passing through your mind like someone watching clouds in the sky. Look. Most people think on autopilot. They want prosperity but feed scarcity thoughts. They want love but feel fear of rejection. They want health but live vibrating worry and self-criticism. This incoherence creates noise in the energetic field, and the universe, which responds to the dominant vibration, doesn't bring what they desire. It brings what they sustain vibrationally. The first step, then, is to align your thoughts. It's not about repeating empty optimistic phrases, but about cultivating a coherent mental state. If you want peace, practice peaceful thoughts. If you want abundance, focus on what you already have and be grateful. If you want health, cultivate inner images of vitality, not sickness. The second step is to work on your emotions. Here's the key. Emotion is the fuel of creation. A thought without emotion is weak, like a loose spark. A thought charged with intense emotion, whether fear, love, joy, or sadness, gains strength. That's why it's essential that you cultivate emotions aligned with what you want to manifest. If you think, "I am prosperous," but feel fear all the time, the vibration that dominates is fear, not prosperity. Practice entering the emotional state of what you want as if it's already reality. The third step is vibration. This is the sum of what you think, feel, and believe. When these three are in harmony, you enter a vibrational state that begins to directly influence the field around you. This isn't magic. This is applied vibrational physics. Just as a radio station only picks up the music it's tuned to, you only attract experiences compatible with your vibration. Want to change the station? Change your internal state. The fourth step is action. Nothing moves only in the mental field. The universe responds when you put energy into motion. That means acting in alignment with what you want. Want to attract new opportunities? Start moving, join new environments, connect with people who resonate with your goals. Want health? Care for your body in alignment with that desire, not by sabotaging yourself. And here's an advanced detail few talk about. It's not enough to act just for the sake of acting. The action needs to come from the state of someone who already is what they desire. For example, there's no point in seeking love while acting out of desperation and fear, because you're vibrating lack, not wholeness. The energy you carry in your action is more important than the gesture itself. That's why the Kybalion insists so much on mental and emotional mastery before any practical attempt. You're not manipulating external objects. You're shaping the vibrational field that inevitably reorganizes the elements around you. This may sound subtle, but it generates concrete changes. Relationships reconfigure, opportunities appear, paths that seem blocked open up. Another essential point is vibrational persistence. It's no use maintaining an aligned vibration for 5 minutes and spending the rest of the day sunk in fear or doubt. The energy that predominates over time is what shapes reality. That's why you should develop daily practices, meditation, conscious visualizations, affirmations that are truly felt, small acts aligned with the new identity you're assuming. Little by little, you'll notice that reality responds, but not because something magical happened out there, because you internally began to occupy a new frequency. You're here, standing at a vibrational crossroads that didn't exist for you just a few minutes ago. Now the veil has fallen. The Kybalion, the 7 laws, the hidden principles that govern mind, matter, and energy have been unveiled. And you can no longer claim ignorance. The responsibility now rests on your shoulders. This isn't just content to entertain, to move, to impress. This is a direct call to your soul. What will you do with this key? This is not knowledge to be shelved, to be mentally stored as just another curiosity. The Kybalion is a living tool, a force that pulses. Knowing about it and not applying it is like carrying dynamite without ever lighting the fuse. You walk around all the time with immense power, but never see results. Here the big shift begins with a simple understanding. You're always co-creating, even when you don't realize it. Every thought you repeat, every emotion you feed, every unexpressed intention, all of that is energy poured into the surrounding field. The universe doesn't respond to your pretty words or your spiritual speeches. It responds to what you vibrate when no one's watching. That's why most of the real work happens in silence. The moment you decide to take on the role of alchemist of your own destiny, there's no more room for victimhood, for excuses, for distractions. You realize that the reality presenting itself to you is a direct mirror of what you've been carrying inside. Want a new reflection? You need to change the source, not just polish the mirror. The final call is not for the faint of heart. Manipulating energy and rewriting your own reality is not an exercise of external power. It's not about dominating others. It's not about impressing anyone. It's about transforming yourself from the inside out to the point where the external world has no choice but to follow that transformation. It's about sustaining a new frequency, even when everything around you tries to pull you back to the old one. And here's the true secret. The universe tests. It wants to know if you're really ready to hold what you're asking for. It will bring challenges. It will stir up old emotions. It will make old patterns reappear. But now, instead of falling into autopilot, you observe. You remember the laws. You choose consciously. At this moment, something very important needs to be said. This video, this content, is not the final answer. It's just the first door. The real work begins after. It begins when you close this video and decide how you're going to live from here on out. It begins when you realize that every small choice counts, that every thought carries weight, that every emotion can be transmuted. You now possess access to abilities that countless people remain unaware of. And this access isn't an external object you grasp. It's an internal state you embody. Your presence here at this moment isn't accidental. Head to the comment section now and declare, "I embrace this invitation and I'm prepared to transform my reality." This isn't merely words on a screen. It's an energetic contract with your highest self. Should you wish to support our mission of sharing these revelations with seekers worldwide, you'll find a donation option in our featured comment below. Together, we can illuminate this ancient wisdom for other awakening souls who hunger for truth. I appreciate your attention through this entire journey, but before you leave, I've created an advanced presentation specifically designed for individuals who've reached this level of understanding. It contains deeper insights into these principles, along with actionable techniques you can implement immediately. Simply select the next video now appearing on your screen, and I'll continue guiding you forward.